Welcome to Release Your Inner Power and Boost Your Week with Ignited Decisions podcast. I'm Shauna B, a life and mindset coach, here to help busy women like you find time, happiness, and ways to fill themselves up in your everyday life. Each week, we dive into real-life challenges, from being a mom to career changes to taking time for yourself, recharging, and personal growth, so you can take action and create this part of your life right now that you truly love. Ready to make this week better than the last? Let's get started. Welcome to Release Your Inner Power and Boost Your Week with Ignited Decisions. I have a wonderful guest named Jane with me today who will be sharing a story that may be hidden for a lot of people. And so I'm curious if her sharing her story will bring out some things in people to maybe chit chat about it and get some answers. So welcome, Jane. Tell the listeners a little bit about who Jane is.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to have the conversation with you. I am I'm curious to see where we go and what we end up talking about. I'm Jane Pilger. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I have an amazing husband. When I'm not doing the things we're gonna talk about, when I'm not coaching and helping other women around the world, I love doing triathlon. My husband and I both train and race and travel all over the world, competing in triathlons and sometimes running races. So that's kind of what keeps us busy when we're not working.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm always so curious about triathlons and the training it takes to do that but to be able to travel around and do that. Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna have to ask questions about that because I love
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So I know our conversation in the past, we were talking about kind of your journey. You said you're a coach, so kind of your journey on what you went through and how you coach women. And I don't want to be the one to leak this juicy topic, but can you tell us, kind of share your story with us on what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say growing up, I always felt very, very smart, very, able to figure things out. I had plenty of friends. I did well in school. I was always very concerned with how other people thought, kind of perceived me. Um, and I would say overall, kind of growing up, things were pretty good. I went to college. Well, let me back up. I went in high school. I went on a little mini Peace Corps type of excursion for 8 weeks. I was gone for some period for 8 weeks, and when I came back, I had gained a significant amount of weight, 20 pounds in like 8 weeks. And with that quick weight gain came stretch marks. I had stretch marks all over my breasts. I had stretch marks all over my hips. And that was really the first time that I was like, oh, like this needs to change. This is not okay. My clothes weren't fitting anymore. And so I went on a pretty restrictive diet. I started counting my calories and going to the gym just to try to lose weight. And that was, kind of towards the end of high school. And then I went to college. And my very first semester of college was October timeframe. I was in a single dorm room by myself, and I had received a care package. And this care package was filled with miniature sized candy bars. It was kind of, Halloween time. It was midterm time. And this care package was filled with miniature sized candy bars. And I proceeded to eat the entire box of candy bars in one sitting. And I don't really remember it. It absolutely was my very first binge. And I don't remember the binge itself, but what I remember so clearly is being on the floor in my dorm room, surrounded by all of these wrappers and thinking, oh my gosh, what have I just done? And being terrified, not understanding what I had done, feeling ashamed, feeling broken, and just so determined that nobody would ever know what I had done and how much I had eaten. And that moment, to me, that really was one of the defining moments in my binge eating, in my 25 plus year battle with binge eating. And I can look back and see that period of time beforehand where I had the weight gain and then went on the really restrictive diet, I can see that had a really key component and a key piece into kind of like the lead up of the binge eating. But that very first binge in my dorm room, my first semester of college, really was a pivotal moment. And I then proceeded to spend decades trying to stop. And all of the things I was trying to do very intentionally to stop were the very things that were keeping me in the cycle in the first place. Of course, I didn't know it at the time, but I also had just so much shame that I wouldn't talk to anyone about it. And so I was kind of trying to figure this out. This is in the late 90s, so we don't exactly have no, this isn't the late 90s. This was in the mid 90s when this started. We're in the mid 90s. And so, there's not the internet that you can just go search and get all of this content and information that we can today wasn't really even available then. So I had a very long journey of, I did ultimately end up going to see several eating disorders therapists. I went through 2 rounds of intensive outpatient treatment at a local eating disorders treatment center here. I have done programs, you name it, kind of all of the things. And I always said, if I ever figure this out, I really want to help other people because I really felt like I was broken. I felt like nobody else could understand that it really felt like I was the only one. And what I have come to learn after years now and helping so many people and talking to so many people about it, this is a very common issue. It's a very common problem, but not many people talk about it because there is so much shame. We don't want people to know what is happening, but it is happening. And then it just feels very like we have to figure it out on our own or by ourselves. And so that really is kind of like has been my journey. And then once I really was able to figure it all out, it's like, okay, now I really want to help other people. So now it is my passion, it is my mission, it is just my drive in life to help people understand why they binge eat and how to stop.
Wow, there's so many things here. Um, what a journey, right? And to go through that and especially like you said, like it is a thing to be in the 90s, generations now don't understand because it's so easy. You can just boop on your phone and you can get an answer. Um, to be able to have easy access to answers, but then you didn't. So I want to back up a little bit. When you were saying you were in college and you got that box and there was wrappers all around you, was that the pivotal moment for you of knowing that you had a binge eating disorder, or was that the pivotal moment for you of like, I have a huge issue here and I need to figure out how to take the next step of changing things?
It's such a good question. I would say that moment was probably the first. I don't know if you've heard people talk about kind of the different levels of awareness, like even with a problem. Sometimes you're not even aware you have a problem, and then you become problem aware. So it's like, oh, I'm aware I have a problem, but I'm not really doing anything yet to actually actively try to solve the problem. Then there's the I'm aware, I'm really actively trying to solve the problem. There's kind of like different levels of awareness. I would say that that binge itself was like when I was like, oh, there is a problem. This is a problem. And I think from there, I don't really remember the exact time frame in the scale of events in terms of if this ramped up really quickly, if it was over time. I think I probably, knowing myself, I probably was like, this is a problem. I need to fix it right away. But I probably felt, well, I can take care of it. I can do it myself. So then
Hmm.
I was trying to, okay, well, if I just ate a lot of food, then I need to not eat so much food, and maybe I need to just change what I'm eating. And so I was trying to kind of experiment and do different things. And then as that wasn't working, and then it became clear, it was kind of like, I have a problem. I've got to fix this problem. Then as I was trying to fix it and I really couldn't do it by myself despite trying really hard, then I was like, okay, now I need help. So then that's probably when I started seeking the support of an eating disorders specific eating disorders therapist.
So you know, when you decided that, how did you go about doing that? Because it's, again, we don't have internet. We don't
Yeah,
have easy access for answers or even trying to, looking up anything. So
right,
how did you
exactly.
find it? Because I know that you said before, there's a lot of shame and it's like a hidden secret in your closet because you don't want people to know because
Yes,
you don't want them to judge you. And,
yes.
you know, you're already battling the judgment of yourself because you understand that this is a problem and you're trying to fix it. And it probably felt like it would just crush you if somebody judged you when you're trying so hard to change
Oh,
things, right? So
absolutely,
how did you
absolutely.
find someone?
It's such a good question. So in the beginning, I was in college, and so I went to the college. I don't know if it was the health center. I called somebody at the college and was just like, I need help. This is what's happening. And so to start with, it was somebody through the college, and then and I saw this person for a number of years while I was in college, and then while I was in college, though, then I met my husband. And when I met my husband, I fell in love and I was like not binging because I was so much in love. And so it really was like, oh, that's a thing of the past. Like that's
Hmm.
really no longer an issue. And so I had this, amazing time of courtship and getting married, really where the binging wasn't very active or very prominent. And then very shortly after we got married, it returned. And it returned pretty significantly. And then at that point, um, when I left college, they gave me the name of an eating disorders specialist in Albuquerque, where I live now, who I could see if I ever needed somebody when I got to Albuquerque. And so I had her name. Her name was Jane, actually. And so then I started seeing her in Albuquerque, and she was the one. And at this point, I had told nobody except for the one person I talked to at the college, and now Jane here locally.
And
And
this is when you
Jane,
were married, correct?
now I'm married. I'm
Okay.
probably married for maybe a little over a year at this point. And Jane is the one who very lovingly encouraged me to share and to tell other people what was going on. And I remember that conversation with my husband so clearly. I was convinced he would not love me. I was convinced he was going to leave me. When I told him, we were upstairs in our bedroom and I couldn't look at him. I had so much shame. Shame wants us to hide.
Hmm.
And so I'm telling him this, but I couldn't even look at him. I had my arm over my eyes, like my eyes were basically being covered by the inside of my elbow as I was telling him this because I was crying, and I just was just so convinced that I was not lovable for this. And my husband is amazing. He just received me with such gentleness and such kindness. But it was a really big deal for me to tell him. I then proceeded to tell a handful of other friends. I told my parents, and it was a journey to actually share my kind of struggles in that way. And I know this part. If anybody who's listening to this is like, oh my gosh, this is me. I have this kind of secret eating, whether it's binge eating or not. It really doesn't even matter. And we can talk about the difference between like what is a binge or not a binge. But if you know you have problems with food and you have kind of like what I like to think about is like a secret struggle with food that you have not told anybody about, my encouragement is to if you have somebody in your life that you know loves you, that you know meets you in general in every other area, meets you with very kind of unconditional kindness and acceptance, my encouragement is to find someone else to talk about it, because when we keep it a secret, when we keep it hidden, it grows and it feels really, really big. And then we want to hide. And the way that we hide is with food. And then we end up in this cycle, kind of perpetuating our own cycle. So I actually have a podcast. It's called the Binge Eating Breakthrough Podcast. And on that podcast, I have a couple of episodes. There's one episode, I have an episode with my husband where we kind of talk about all kinds of things, which was amazing. But I also have an episode, I'll give you the link if you want to put it in these show notes. But I have an episode about how to talk to your loved ones about your secret eating. And it really goes through kind of the exploration because the truth is we don't want to tell anyone and everyone. We do want to kind of be selective about who we talk to, and we really want to know why we're telling somebody. We don't want to tell somebody just so they can like hold us accountable or make sure we don't eat whatever at the restaurant. Like that's not why we tell people, but it's also a really, for somebody who has never ever shared, it's a really big deal. And if you are listening and you have a secret struggle with food, and you have never shared, or you're in a relationship where your partner doesn't know, I want you to know number one, you are not alone. There are so many people, literally all over the world, who are in this situation. So you are not the only one. You are not broken. You really are in good company. So I want you to know that. I also want you to know that if you can find the right person to talk to, if you have somebody else in your life who you know already is kind and compassionate and warm, it is possible that they could be a source of support for you. And if they aren't, I really encourage you to get support from someone else who does understand, someone who you would feel comfortable talking to. Because when we hide this stuff, when we keep it a secret, it's literally one of the ways that we perpetuate it. I don't believe we can overcome our secret struggle with food without sharing that secret and really kind of shining a light on it in a very gentle, kind, and understanding type of way.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I sometimes the hardest things that we need to do to step into our truth and shed some light on it to have it become smaller. It seems like such a big hurdle, but it's so
Yeah,
worth it. It's
yeah,
so worth it to do it. It's almost like all that nervous, scared, and just very uncomfortable feelings. It's this is the time to get that, get that you can do this, because once
yeah,
you do it, and shedding all of that after you do it, of just doing it and saying it the first time, I can't even imagine the weight lifted off
yeah.
of your shoulders. And then I'm sure a bunch of emotions
Hmm.
that follow. But then the next time, to call in your support system, the next time you are able to speak that truth and say that to somebody else, it's not as hard as the first time.
Yeah, yeah. And here's what I want you to know. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's possible you start to even imagine, well, maybe if somebody comes to your mind right now, maybe I could tell this person. For some people, it's a partner. For some people, it's a best friend. For some people, literally, I have had people who it's like, it's my mom. Like my mom is my, source. So it could really could be anybody. But if somebody comes to mind, that's a really good sign for you. Here's the next thing I want you to know. In the journey of talking to people about this, do not expect yourself to just be like to tell somebody and then be like, okay, now I'm ready to talk about it. And the next time it happens, I'm just going to reach out for help or, whatever. That's really not how it works either. I can remember after I had told this is kind of like several years later. I've now told my husband, and even with my husband, there was a period of time where I would tell him afterwards, but I wouldn't tell him, no way would I tell him during, like while I was binging. I wouldn't tell him, I wouldn't reach out. He might even try to reach out to me and I wouldn't necessarily respond. There was a period of time where I would talk to him, but only like after a little while. There was a period of time where I wouldn't even say the word binge. I wouldn't even tell him what happened. I would just say, I had a bad day. That was like my code word. And so there was this process that we went through for me to kind of feel safe enough to open up to him, safe enough to tell him what had happened. And then at some point, and a lot of this was done really with us just figuring it out. I think if we had had somebody else guiding us and
Hmm.
giving us some wisdom and guidance, this probably could have all happened a lot faster. But I can remember at one point finally just deciding, all right, I am not going to, number one, I'm not going to call it a bad day anymore. I'm just going to like really say what it was. Um, I am not going to hide. I used to hide the evidence. So I would drive around town and I would go to the convenience store and buy like two king size candies, pretty much enough to get me to the next place. But I never would buy a lot of food in one place because I didn't want anybody to know I was going to be eating all of this food. So I'd go to the convenience store, I'd buy maybe two king size candies, especially if they were, on a sale, and a drink, of course, a diet drink. And then I would drive to the bakery, and then I would get a couple of things at the bakery, and then I would drive to the store, and I would get a couple things at the store. But and so I would eat as I was driving around, and I would throw the trash, the wrappers away. I would go to a gas station, and I would throw all of that away before I got home, so that there was never any evidence. So at one point I was just like, you know what? I am not going to hide evidence anymore. I'm going to call it what it was. I'm going to actually tell him what I ate. I'm going to like talk about it instead of just kind of like having kind of code words, but still kind of trying to hide it. But that was a process for me to feel safe enough to actually actually do that. So it doesn't just happen like, oh, okay, now I'm going to open up. Oh, okay, now I'm going to tell you everything. Oh,
Right.
now I'm going to, reach out in the middle of it. Like it, the whole journey to overcoming binge eating. I mean, anybody who goes through it would love to have a flip of a switch and just have it never happen again. But in my experience, that's just, I mean, it's really not how any change works.
No.
And it's so important to see the changes, to let it take some time, but to recognize the progress, to recognize like, oh my gosh, here I am, I'm actually able to talk about this, or these other things are changing, and to be able to see the little pieces of change and how when you multiply them and they compound over time, we end up with this completely different relationship with ourselves, with food, with our bodies, with our loved ones than we had before.
I Man, I love this. I love this. You said process. You said journey, right? You said those words, and it is super important for others to understand that it's, of course, the big overall goal matters. Every part of it matters, but what matters the most is the smaller steps that you take
Yes.
to get to those bigger goals, recognizing those. And you would be surprised. I just talked with somebody about this today, just talked with a client about it today, that writing and recording those smaller steps is always really helpful in a bigger journey like this, because when you can recall those, when you are having a bad day, or when you're like, this isn't, you're frustrated and you're pissed off because this isn't working, go to that place wherever you keep those small steps and remind yourself how far you have come. Look at the
Yes.
50 to 100 steps I've taken so far. I am not way back there. I'm right
Yes.
here, because sometimes you have to turn around and look how far you've come to really realize that I'm in it. Like, I'm doing
Yes.
it. I'm in it. And it flips the feelings a little bit, and to not be so heavy and not be so bad, because you can see your progress that you're doing.
Yeah.
Did you have a process of recording that to be able to recall that? Did you utilize that tool at all?
When I was going through this, the whole idea of like celebrating progress and the little wins and how these little things add up over time, nobody ever talked to me about it. Even in my eating disorder treatment, even in talking to, eating disorders therapists, it was just not something that was literally ever suggested to me. So I wish I did, and I wish I had. But no, I certainly use that and encourage my clients to do it now, but in my own journey, I didn't.
I love that you naturally, like you didn't necessarily have a place to record it, but you naturally did it. You naturally
Yeah.
looked at it like, hold on, look at this, like you took your time to stop and look at those
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
having to record it. So you still did it. You just didn't have like a
Yeah.
physical
That's like
thing
practice.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So there's a book that really goes right along with exactly what we're talking about. So for anybody listening, an amazing book, highly recommend, no matter what you are working on in your life, is The Gap and the Gain. And The Gap and the Gain really here is the summary of the book in like two sentences. Most of us are focused on the gap between where we are right now and where we want to be. So if we're talking about food and I'm looking at, okay, where I am now with my relationship with food or with my relationship with my body and where I want to be, it's like, oh, I still got a long way to go. And it feels really far away. There's this gap. It's a lack. I'm not there yet. But well, what this book encourages you to do, and it's exactly what we're talking about here, is look at the gain. So we look at how far we've come from where we started. And if we can see from where we were to where we are now and focus on the gain, like that's where the power is. Because here's the truth, every single one of us, as soon as we get to that place we want to go, all we're going to do is move the goalpost. It's going to be like,
Hmm.
oh, well, I'm here now, but now I want to go over here. And now there's another gap.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I can keep looking at the gain, it is the only time and the only really time I give my clients permission to compare themselves. So many
Hmm.
people compare themselves. I wish I weighed what I weighed when I was 20, or I wish I had the energy that I had 10 years ago. It's like, no, no, no. We do not have permission to compare to our past selves like that. But where we do have permission to compare is to look back and say, wow, look how far I've come.
Hmm.
Wow, I used to do this. Or if I was in this situation today, 5 years ago, here's how I would respond. And here's how I responded today. It's that game, like that game mentality.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And all the growth that goes with it. It goes back to the level of awarenesses, right?
Yes.
It's just how aware are you of that and how much of that power you can utilize for yourself to make it
Yes.
easier to keep going. Because you're right, the gap just changes.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
always there. It just changes because on the other side is going to be something different. It's not, you know what I mean? So I love that.
Yeah.
And it's always a good reminder to turn around and look how far you've come. Yeah.
Yes.
When you started telling people and going through that process and it becoming easier because that is also, the process and the journey of doing it. Once you had, like, was there a significant moment for you where you were like, okay, these people are like they're going to stick around, like they're not going to leave, they're not going to shame you, they're not going to, you know what I mean? Was there a significant time where you were like, I have my support system, I have my people, and recognizing that?
For sure. And I think for me, there was this period of time where there was never anybody that I told who met me with a like, ew, you do what? Like there was never any of the like actual like judgment or condemnation that I feared. There was, however, there were a few people that I told that it was almost like they didn't really know how to respond. And so when that happened, then basically my response was like, oh, well, they're not my people. Like I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I would kind of try to introduce it and kind of be met with either nothing or kind of like a little awkwardness. And then I would just decide, okay, they're not my people. That's fine. We don't have to talk about that. And that I just literally would not even just bring it up again. And then those people who met me with the kindness and the compassion and the questions and the like, well,
Mhm.
let's talk about it, and kind of opening up about their own things, then it was like, these are my people. This is my support system. And I really don't think anybody needs more than a couple of people who they can truly confide in. And even just one is plenty if you are receiving support that feels supportive for lack of a better word. But yes, having that like, okay, these are my people. This is kind of my area of support. Um, is such a different place to be than I'm all alone. I'm broken. I have to figure this out on my own. And I kind of don't even know how. Like I'm trying all of these things, but it's kind of like every day is Groundhog Day. I promise myself today's going to be different. I'm not going to do it again. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? Here I am all over again. I'm never going to figure this out. Like that is a very, very tiring and frustrating place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you found your support system and you are now talking to somebody and doing this process of getting a hold of this and changing mindsets and all of the things that I'm sure it entails, um, when did you start feeling like how am I going to say this? When did you start feel I want to say like the train's leaving the station, but like when did you start feeling like okay, like you are really making like good progress? Like again, we all have dips and things that
Yeah.
happen that we have to come out of, but was there like a moment where you're like, "Well, I'm doing it. Like I'm doing the thing. I'm getting this. I'm doing it."
Yeah, you know what's really interesting to me is there was this period of time where it was like, yes, like there's this momentum, like I'm really figuring this out. And this was as I was also going through, so I've been through my 2 rounds of intensive outpatient therapy. I've been through some of my certification to become a life coach. I'm like, yes, I'm doing this. It's been a long time since I've had a binge. Feel really good. Like things are going. Like I've figured it out, basically. And then I am getting certified. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to start helping other people. So then I am now starting to, up until this point, I either talked to nobody or I talked to very specific, very safe, curated people. Now I'm going to start talking to anybody about my experience, about my past, about this thing that I have kept secret for so long. And I started binging again. Like as I was kind of putting myself out there and starting my business and working on my website, it brought up a lot. I really wish somebody would have told me when I started my business how much can come up for somebody around that. And I mean, this is not binge eating specific. It's anybody who starts a business or puts themselves out there in a new way. I mean, it's just kind of part of the way that our nervous systems work. But I knew nothing about that. All I knew was here I am trying to put myself out there to help other people with binge eating, and now I'm binge eating again. So I felt very, I kind of felt like a fraud. Who am I? Because now here I'm doing this in secret, but then also kind of like claiming to be able to help you. And with that, I I've always been a very like kind of determined, resilient, I'm gonna keep going. I'm going to figure this out type of person. And so with this, I was like, there's something else here. There's something that I'm not learning. There's some other piece of the puzzle. And at that point, then I started learning about the nervous system and really kind of diving deep into understanding the nervous system, understanding really just the concept of developing safety, developing trust with yourself, safety within yourself, safety with other foods. I never felt safe around a lot of different foods. And so once I really then kind of learned more about the nervous system and how all of that played in, to me, those were like the two missing pieces, safety and trust. And learning how to develop and cultivate both safety and trust with yourself and with food was like game changer. So now I could take what I had learned before in terms of the mindset and some of these other things on top of really then the nervous system work and really kind of developing trust and many other kind of modalities that I was just so fascinated to kind of learn and to dive deep into. Then it was like, now I finally feel like I'm really looking at everything all together.
Yeah, it's crazy how It's crazy how I call it like an onion, right? Like
Yes.
you peel back layers of an onion and you're like, I've got this, and you're like on this roll, and then another layer starts to fray away, and
Yep.
you start to see more things, and you're like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But having the tools that you had, and like you said, determined resilience and all of the tools that you had, that when that was ready to crack open for you, to
Yeah.
see more, but then to
Yep.
be able to get that. And then how cool is that at the same time of where you were at in your life of opening your business and doing your business and having like almost like it's a weird way of shedding light to something that you can help others with.
Yes.
But
Totally.
having you go through that and be that like beacon, if you will, to process and do it and then be like, wait, hold on, there's more. I have
Yes.
more to help you with now
Yes.
because
Yes.
of this experience.
Yes. And
That's so cool.
here's what I have come to learn. There are a lot of people in the healing helping space who are helping with food who are having their own food struggles. And then there's nowhere to go because it's like, "Ugh, who do I talk to? Where do I
Hmm.
go?" Because I'm, kind of this purported expert, but we're also human. And so
Right.
we do there, and most of us get into this because of our own journeys and our own challenges. And so, there is a whole it's a very big subset of humans out there who are struggling with food and have their own struggles. There's also a subset of humans out there who are helping others with food while also still having their own challenges as well. So if that's you, you also are not alone, even though most people don't talk about it because, again, of the shame and the perception and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting how you put that because it's so true. The people that can help you the most are the ones that have also you know, had the journey and they have the tools. And like you said before, there was no person, there was
Yeah,
no person to help me do this thing right here. And I kind of had to figure it out. And how you said that you want a switch to be flipped because you want it to be like fixed right now, quick fix. I need this to be done and over with. But to be able to have, I call it a hype girl, but like to be able to have like a hype girl in your corner that has all of this really cool stuff that works to get you your gains.
yeah,
You know what I mean? To get you all those little gains in the process, but so much faster than what you had to go through yourself just figuring it out. It's
yeah,
so cool to have those people here because it can really make a huge difference
totally.
if you just take the step to do it.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it's like we can't see things on our there's so much we just can't see on our own. Every human has blind spots, especially in the areas that we feel kind of the most stuck. So often we just
Hmm.
we can't even see it, which is why bringing somebody else in who can help you see what you can't see on your own, like that's the beauty of getting support. And it's why in those areas where we are the most stuck, it's very hard to figure it out on your own. There's a great quote that I believe is Einstein: you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So if your mind created the problem, it is unlikely to be the same mind, the same mindset, the same level of thinking that gets you out of it.
Hmm.
So this is if you feel like you're just stuck over and over and over again, bringing in another perspective is often a way to help you see things. I talk a lot about having kind of different glasses, seeing things through a new lens. So, with eating specifically, so many people have this lens of shame and judgment. I hate that I do it. I don't like this thing. I don't like this about myself. I want it to go away. I don't want anybody else to see. And because we have this shame and this judgment, we can't even see anything else. I think that binges or our challenges with food, I see them as lights on the dashboard. They just tell us there's something under the hood that we need to look at. But shame and judgment put a 50-pound weight on the hood. So we
Yeah.
can't even open the hood of the car to be able to look underneath to see what's going on. And then if we look underneath, if we're looking with our glasses of shame and judgment, I mean, number one, it's unlikely we're even going to get the hood open. But if
Right.
we do, there's nothing that we can really do about it. But if we can put on a different pair of glasses, the glasses of curiosity, how does this make sense? What else is going on here? Then we can really start to see with a new lens. We can start to kind of troubleshoot and figure out what's making these lights come on in the first place. Then we can change that. And we're really addressing it at the root cause, not with the food, which most people just go, well, I have a problem with food, so food must be the problem. Let me just change what I'm eating, where I'm eating, when I'm eating, what food I bring into the house, then I'll overcome this problem. And that is not going to actually get under the hood to solve what's causing the lights to come on in the first place.
So good. That's so good. That's such a good everything. All the things you just said of like painting that picture is a perfect way to say that. That's so true and so good. So I love how passionate you are about all this, and I love all the goodies that you have also. I want to talk a little bit more about those. I know that we have talked about 8 ways to stop binge eating. I know you've written a book, you have a podcast, and you coach people through this process. So can we talk
Yeah.
a little bit about, touch on a little bit of each of these so
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
know what the
Yeah.
process is to just be in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a podcast, a great way to kind of, if you're like, oh, wow, this is all super interesting. I want to know more. The Binge Eating Breakthrough podcast is available on any podcast player. If you go all the way back to the first handful, 8, 10 episodes, what you'll get there is you'll get my whole story, and then you'll get the first 8 episodes. I have the 8 reasons why you binge, and then how to each reason has its own solution. So the first kind of 10 episodes or so are why you binge and how to stop. So that's a great place to kind of go just dive into that. And there's also some of the early episodes dive into what exactly is a binge versus, let's say, overeating. Lots of great information in the podcast itself. So that's an amazing resource. The other resource that you had mentioned is my book. So the Binge Eating Breakthrough. It also talks about the 8 reasons, and it's separated into what I call the 4 pillars of cultivating peace with food. And those 4 pillars are clarity, connection, compassion, and confidence. And so I do a deep dive. Each chapter of the book is generally a question, like uh why do I do this? There's all kinds of is this book for me? Why do I behave this way? All kinds of, what do I do after a binge? Why am I so mean to myself? How do I stay connected with food? There's all kinds of great information in this book. I am also literally weeks or less away from publishing the companion workbook filled with all
Awesome.
kinds of exercises and things you can do. So if you don't have somebody yet that you can talk to, you can get this book. You can get the workbook. You can go through some of these exercises on your own. There's some great resources in there as well. And that's available on Amazon. And then, yeah, I work with people. I work with people in 2 ways, one-on-one, as well as I have a group coaching program called Cultivate. And so different programs are, some people prefer the one-on-one to really get that personal, private, deep level of support. And other people really love being in a community where there are other people who really understand and are able to, really kind of just support each other and not feel so alone in the journey, and to be able to celebrate all those little moments of progress. And we have people from literally all over the world in the group, some people who've been in the group for a long time, and it's just so fun to look back on the journeys and really think about like how much they've changed from the very beginning of when they joined, and just thinking back to like initial conversations with them and just where they just felt hopeless and out of control and just eating things out of, jars and feeling unable to stop, and now just being so much more connected to themselves and really understanding. And just, I call it cultivate because it's really, they're cultivating an entirely new relationship, not only with food, but with themselves and with their body. So it really is this process of growing, and just it's a really powerful community. So yeah.
I love that. I love that space. You're right. And to see how far they've come, right? To see
Yes,
all the gains that they've
exactly.
had, like
Yeah.
it's a really special thing to have a community like that.
Yeah.
So that's
What I
really
love,
awesome that you have
what I
that.
love about having a community like that too is where you have people who are at different phases of the journey. Is, we have new people who come in and they see people who have come so far and they're like, oh wow, I'm inspired. I'm inspired to someday kind of be here. And then when the new people come in, the people who've been around for a while, they're like, oh, I remember. I
Mhm.
remember when I first joined, and they're able to kind of really meet them if they have questions or they have concerns. It's like, I was there too, and here's what I did, or here's something that you might, the way that they are able to support each other, being kind of in different phases on the journey. It's so beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And to be able to see all of it and just like be their hype girl, like
Yeah.
be back there and just be like, yes, I remember, and just being on the journey with them. That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
I will have all of the information to get a hold of Jane in the show notes, whether it's her podcast, whether her book, all of the things, so it can be a quick click for you guys so you don't have to search for it if you don't want to. It'll be there in the show notes. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners?
I would say this. I know there are so many people out there who are struggling with food and who have struggled with food for years or even decades, or what feels like literally their entire life. And sometimes it can feel like there's no hope for me, there's no way this could change. But I want you to know that change is possible. No matter how long it's been, no matter how many years, no matter how many decades, no matter what you've done to try to change your relationship with food, change is possible. I have seen it, I have witnessed it, I have experienced it. It is possible. And just being open to the possibility. And my guess is you wouldn't still be listening to this podcast if there wasn't at least a part of you that didn't believe that, that didn't think, oh, maybe there is, maybe it is possible for me to change. Maybe there is something else that I just haven't seen yet. Maybe I haven't like had the right glasses on. And if I could just see this in a different way, I could experience something different, then things could change. So just my encouragement, whether you explore my stuff or something else, I just want you to be open to the possibility that change is possible. That relationship with food that you really, really want for yourself, you have it on your heart. You have that desire for a reason. It's not just there so that, you know, it's not just there as a result of something else. It is on your heart for a reason. And I believe those things that are on our heart, they are for us. They don't always end up looking the way we thought they would look, but we have the desires of our heart. They are placed on our heart for a reason. And I believe that means that it is possible for you. So I just want you to be open to the possibility of something different and of change.
That's so good. So good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us on what you have gone through and your thoughts and your processes and all of the good things that have come from it, your podcast, your book, your coaching program, all of those things. Thank you for sharing with us today. I have one more question for you before we sign off. I always like to ask my guests who come on here because again, we all have our own journey and our own uniqueness to what we have experienced in life. I am very curious what your superpower is.
It's so funny when you asked me this earlier, the answer came to mind right away. And as we've been talking, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. This is it. It's helping people see what they can't see on their own. I definitely have an ability to help people see with that new lens, with that new perspective. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who have been like, wow, I have never seen that before. I've never noticed that before. Oh, that makes so much sense. When we can start to make sense of why we do the things we do, why we show up in the way we do, it's like we 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 what is the word I'm looking for? It's like we gain awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not just awareness, it's understanding. We start to understand ourselves. And when we can understand ourselves, then we can change. Actually, just did a podcast episode where I was talking about understanding really is like one of the foundational pieces of trust. So many people don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves to be around certain foods. But it's like we need the understanding first. Think about anybody you trust. There has to be this level of understanding first before we can trust anybody or anything. So I love helping people understand themselves because what we really want is trust. You've got to start with that awareness and then the understanding. And so I think it's one of my superpowers is being able to help people develop those layers that ultimately get to that trust that you really want with yourself and with food.
Thank you for sharing. That's a
Yeah.
good one. I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Well,
Yeah.
again, it was so good to have you on the show. I am so happy to have chatted with you, and I know that you have spoke to somebody out there today. And feel free, you guys that are listening, to reach out to Jane and share your story, ask questions, any of that kind of stuff. I'm sure she would love to hear from you. And again, thank you for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much. Yes, I love hearing from people and hearing their stories. Any questions, how they've been impacted, it really truly is a gift to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned something new, or got some gems to take away that will boost your week. I release a new episode each week, so make sure to click that follow button to not miss what is coming next. If you love the show or want to share a story, send me a quick message. I love hearing from listeners. If you know someone who needs this episode in their life, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they would love you for it. If you are looking to connect more, check out the show notes for all the social links, my website. I would love to hear how this episode helped you and what you loved about it. If there's a topic you want to hear about, send that too. All right, ladies, now is the time to release your inner power. If you're ready to break free from burnout and create a life that actually feels good, I've got you covered. You can work with me in a few ways. Join my monthly membership for ongoing support, dive into my workshops for quick breakthroughs, book coaching sessions for personalized guidance, or go all in with my Revive and Recharge Your Life coaching program to build a foundation for lasting change. No matter where you are on your journey, there is a path for you, my friend. Let's get started. DM me or check the link in the show notes to get more information.